Welcome everybody to our wonderful new premises. And the air conditioning's great. That's all we can talk about. It's 40 degrees outside, but we're loving the cool air in here, and it's such a beautiful space to work in. So welcome. We're very excited. This is our first event of the year with author Kirsty Nancarrow, who used to be a resident here in Alice Springs and worked for ABC as a journalist, also for IAD Press and CDU. So welcome, Kirsty. We're also really looking forward to hearing your story about your trip to Nepal and what it's all about. It's about Som and how he created schools in Nepal for girls so they could avoid being sold into sex slavery, basically. And we're just I'm very excited about this talk. I'm really interested to hear all about it. So welcome, Kirsty. And just one little formality, we just need to acknowledge that we are here on Arunta country, and we just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country, former traditional owners, elders, and present elders. So we know we run our business on this country and feel really privileged to be here in Central Australia. So welcome, Kirsty, and thank you everybody for coming. So we look forward to hearing your story.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to sit down, which means I can't directly look you in the eye, but I am completely humbled by the turnout, and some of you have just walked in. I haven't had a chance to reconnect with you yet, but Mantua is, I very much consider this place my home. I might have moved away to Cairns in 2013, but literally every time I come back here I get goosebumps, I burst into tears, and it's where I come to recenter myself. And I have made friends for life here, and I continue to make new friends here. And I just feel every time I come back here that the town wraps itself around me, and here is the evidence today. So thank you so much for taking time out on your Saturday afternoon to be here with me and listen to my very first author talk ahead of the launch of Himalayan Dreams, the Story of Som Tamang. This is a labour of love for me. It's been 7 years of my life, and it has been a life-changing and a life-saving project for me. So thank you again for coming today and to listening to me. I won't talk for too long, but there will be some time for questions afterwards. And there are a few pre-sale books available today, but don't worry if you miss out, because the lovely Bronwyn is going to order some more. So if you miss out on a book today, you can do a pre-sale with her, and she'll be in touch when the books come in. So how did this all start? How did I go from being a journalist at the ABC to writing a book? They say everybody's got a book in them, and I guess I didn't know what that book was until I felt like it was delivered to me by the universe. It was almost like, you have to write this. And the story goes, I interviewed Som Tamang, who lives in Cairns, about 2 days after the April 25 earthquake in 2015. He was a Cairns resident. He runs a shop called Himalayan Dreams, which is fair trade goods. He has a humanitarian organisation called Friends of Himalayan Children. There's a flyer on your seat about the work that he does. And he also runs a trekking company called Take on Nepal. And I didn't know any of this when I interviewed him 2 days after the earthquake. He was a Nepali citizen who had been impacted by the earthquake. He lost his brother, and he was going back to help immediately afterwards, and was gathering support from the Cairns community to get supplies into not just his village, which is Batasi, northeast of Kathmandu, but other remote villages that he knew would be missed in the initial response to the disaster. So I interviewed this man, and I was very struck by how stoic he was about everything. And he welcomed me into his home at possibly the worst time of his life, and he was just very open and willing to share. And so I continued following his journey when he went back a few times to help, and I learnt more about the work that he does. And he actually has been helping educate kids in his village for more than 10 years now. And where that all began was as a young boy in Batassi. He grew up in extreme poverty, and at that stage the school only went to grade 5, so he had to go to another village to be educated. His parents, or his father at least, didn't want him to go to school at all because he saw more value in the children actually helping out on the farm. So education wasn't valued, but it was even worse for girls. And a lot of girls went missing from his village, and he learnt after he ended up as a child slave in Kathmandu in pursuit of his own education that a lot of them were being trafficked to India for the sex trade. And also that they would never actually get to see school, that they would be married off early, have children. His own mother had her first child at 14, and education just wasn't considered necessary for girls. So he came back, he managed to escape after a couple of years, come back to the village, and he decided he had to educate his siblings, and particularly his sister. His older sister didn't get to go to school. And so he fought his parents' culture to make that change, and he paid for her to go to school and his younger siblings. And then the need grew. He kept supporting more of his family members and then more of the village children. He became a trekking guide and fell in love with an Australian woman and managed to make his way to Australia. And there's some fantastic stories in the book. It's very hard to categorize. I don't know where you're going to put it on the shelf, Bronwyn, but it's an adventure story, it's a love story, it's a cultural history story, it's my story. There's all of these stories wrapped into Som's biography, but needless to say, he had a very adventurous and traumatic childhood and life, and he made it to Australia, and then he could really start making a difference to himself and to the children of his village. So he managed to go back to school, finish his education through TAFE in Cairns, and then he was the first person in his village to do a university degree. He started Friends of Himalayan Children so he could start helping more and more children and build a hostel for those who'd lost their parents or who had too many mouths to feed. And now on average there's 40-50 kids at any one time who are being supported in the hostel, and then about the same amount outside in the village to go to school. And that's made a huge difference. The school now goes to year 10, and the project that is referred to in the flyer on your seat is to achieve his ultimate aim and my ultimate aim with the book, which is to get that school to year 12. What that means is that kids can they can stay in the village to complete their education, because at year 10 they either have to go at least 3 hours away to finish their education, or they just drop out because it's expensive. So that's really the story of Som and my connection with it. The reason I decided to write this book is because I just really connected with it. I always valued education and knew that it had the power to change things. My father was a teacher, and I worked for IAD and CDU here because I could see the value in education. And I always like training people at the ABC as well. So I've mentored a lot of journalists that are now in politics or overseas as foreign correspondents. And I became more involved. I emceed an International Women's Day dinner for the Friends of Himalayan Children and started sponsoring the first of 3 girls. And then I thought, having covered lots of natural disasters, I knew that the need would not just go away after a year or so. Sometimes there's this outpouring after a tragedy and then people move on. But the people who have experienced it are still very much in need. So I decided to go and volunteer in Batassi for a month as a teacher in late 2016, about 18 months after the disaster. And I was in a pretty low place myself at that point. I'd taken a step away from the ABC. I was very depressed. I was subsequently diagnosed with PTSD. But at the time I thought, what can I do? I feel like I'm pretty useless to everyone right now. So that experience of going to that village and volunteering as a teacher for a month and being with those children and seeing the value they had for their education, it just changed everything for me. And I came home from that trip in 2016 and told Som I needed to write his story. So it has been a long journey to this point. It took me going back in 2018 to do all of the interviews with his family and people that he'd helped. And I actually had to walk to Everest Base Camp to spend time with him and the girls that he'd helped. Some of the girls that were leading us as the women trekking guides I had taught in the school 2 years before. So it was wonderful seeing them blossom as young female leaders and how proud they were having been invested in and valued. So that's how we got to here. So it's taken me a couple of years to research, another couple to write, and another couple to finally make a book. And I'm so proud of this book. The people who've already read it have sent me wonderful messages of how inspired they are by it, and I hope that if you get to read this book that you will also reflect on your own experience and the value of education and how we need very little to be happy. That's something that I really learnt living in Batassi for a month twice, was you can have almost nothing, but it's more than enough if we value it. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll have some questions now. So I interviewed him when I was a journalist at the ABC in Far North Queensland. He lives in Cairns, and I knew that he'd been affected by the earthquake in Nepal in 2015. So I reached out to him to do a story, and that's how the connection was first made. He actually still lives in Cairns. He's been there longer than I have.
Can you speak Nepalese?
No, I can, as Vishnu down the back can attest, I can say namaste and dhanyabad.
Did you have an interpreter when you were a teacher?
No, actually they wanted the kids to be learning in English. So I used the vehicle of journalism to teach English. And look, it was challenging because some of the younger ones are only just starting to learn a little bit of English. So there's a lot of sign language, there's a lot of demonstrations. I played a lot of videos and I brought a lot of props from Australia to just explain concepts. So it's not perfect, but it worked. And I also teach dance. So I remember the first day at school, it was after a period of holidays, and all the kids came back to school, but all the teachers didn't. So on my first day where I thought I would be shadowing somebody, by the third lesson, there were no teachers in the school, and they shoved all the kids that were left from 5 to 16 in the one classroom and said, "Here you go." And I'm like, what am I going to teach that's going to work for that age gap? So I took them all out onto the playground and I taught them a salsa lesson. You have to think outside the box sometimes.
So Kirsty, living in Cairns and then being in Allison, like my sister Tanya, how did you get the motivation and continue to write a book and to work over 7 years and stay on track?
Yeah, that is really difficult, I have to say. As a journalist, you're used to instant gratification. Every day is a new news cycle, and you can write, I think my record was about 22 stories in one day. So that's a lot to show for your effort every day, and it's there to see and for people to witness. A book is not like that. It takes a very long time. It takes dedication, it takes patience and persistence. So those two things are the main things I got out of this journey. And yeah, it was tough. I experimented with all different ways of writing and going, okay, well, Monday's going to be my day to write. And then I wouldn't have the inspiration on Monday and I'd be distracted by the smallest things. So by the end of the process, I really just went with the flow. And whenever I felt like I could, I just went, all right, it's time. And I got in there. And sometimes that was 4:30 on a Sunday morning. It's just when I was productive and I had to do that. And in the end, because I was on a time frame, I had support through the Regional Arts Development Fund, through the Cairns Regional Council, gave me some money to write the book. But of course that came with some conditions, like having it finished in a year. So I do like a deadline, and I probably did my best work in that last kind of push because I had a month left and I was like, I need to get this happening. And I also went on a writing retreat about halfway through because I kind of was really happy with the first half of the book, and then I went, I've written all the good stuff. What am I going to do to sustain the second half of this book? And I got really stuck. And I went on a writer's retreat for a few days, and it just gave me that space to get myself back into the book and try and explore some of the themes, and I got the job done. So it is a very long, hard road. And then you write the thing, and then there's no celebration because you actually have to get it published. So like almost 2 years ago, I celebrated the fact that I'd finished the book, but I couldn't really celebrate because I couldn't actually get it out there to the world. So it's taken all this other time to get to the point where I can actually publish the book.
Are there plans for you to do it as an audiobook?
Yes, I get this question a lot. It's an expense, it's time I don't have right now, but yes, we'll see how the first tranche of books goes. It is going to be available as an ebook as well. So the official launch is in Cairns next weekend, the 2nd of March, and on all of the online book platforms from the 4th of March as both a paperback and an ebook. But of course, we encourage you to buy it from your local bookstore because they are all very good at supporting authors as well. So yes, down the track I will entertain having an audiobook, but not anytime soon.
Amazon or?
Yeah, all of the places. So yeah.
Okay, how can we support SOM's organisation?
So there's a few ways you can support SOM's organisation. So the flyer on your seats, there's a companion project to the book. Because his organisation sends most of the money overseas to support the kids in Batassi, they don't have tax deductibility, and I think that's been a bit of a barrier sometimes for people to make donations. So you can make donations directly to Friends of Himalayan Children, which is f-hc.org. However, this project is actually through Rotary International, the Rotary Club of Cairns Sunrise, and they have set up this program where you can make tax-deductible donations, which will ultimately help build those last 2 years of school and get the teachers in there to teach, and accommodation for the teachers and the students for that extra 2 years of school. So that's one way you can support. You can sponsor a child in the village like we do. We sponsor 3 girls. And you can also go and visit. You can go and volunteer in the school if you wish. You can have an experience, immersive experience in the village. You can combine that with a trek if you like through Take on Nepal, and just really immerse yourself in Nepali culture. And I'm really pleased to say that since I left this town, you've got a really growing Nepali community here in Cairns. They really are the most beautiful, generous people, and if you don't have friends in this community already, then I encourage you to make some, and they cook amazing food. So you can look at Take on Nepal, knowing that it's a company that really tries to support women guides into the industry, which is quite pioneering. It's been a male-dominated industry. So yes, you can go there, you can help, you can go on a trek, you can sponsor a child, you can make a cash donation to help grow the school.
Kirsty, getting to Batassi, how far is it from Kathmandu? Are there public buses that head there?
It's a bit of a rough road, let me tell you. I'd actually prefer to walk it than get a 4-wheel drive. For people like us, it's a 2-day, they plan it as a 2-day walk from the edge of Kathmandu. You walk through the Shivapuri National Park, you stay at Chisapani, which it looks like a time capsule. There's still buildings on an angle from the earthquake that no one will ever have money to fix. And then you walk to Batassi the next day. So
a little bit further out from Dulakal?
I'm not sure where that is, but it's about 27 kilometres walk.
Okay.
You can get there in a few hours in a very bumpy 4-wheel drive ride. If you're Som, you can run there in about 5 hours. But yeah, 2 days walk. And walking there is the best way, I think, to experience it, because you are kind of getting a sense of place. and getting used to the altitude on the way. It is a bit higher than Kathmandu, so it takes a bit of adjustment as well and a bit of fitness.
So Kirsty, what future is there for these kids once they've got their education? Are there jobs there, or can they leave and go and find work somewhere else?
Yes, so there's, I guess, not terribly much traditional employment in the village, but there's buildings to build, roads to build, farms to tend still, tourism industry, obviously. So a lot of these children have become young leaders and they are involved in the trekking industry. And many of them are actually going to complete degrees in Kathmandu, and they're doing things like social work. Som's sister, who has now moved to Australia, she's a qualified pharmacist and social worker. So she's now working in a pharmacy in Cairns, and a lot of them want to be teachers, which I found so inspiring, because I interviewed a lot of the children when I was there the first and second times, with a view to getting them sponsors. And you say, what do you want to be when you leave school? And invariably they'll all say teachers or nurses. So they've valued profession, they really value the education, and they value giving back to community. One girl said journalist, and that's the one that Women in Media Far North Queensland sponsored.
Do you know, Kirsty, to what extent Som's work has been able to stamp out this sex trade?
Yes, I didn't touch on that, but thank you for the prompt. So as far as he knows, no children, no girls have been trafficked from the village in about the last 7 or 8 years, which is huge, because there were like a dozen or so a year. So it's a huge difference. And with COVID, it was very difficult because he couldn't get back there. The trekking industry stopped. And a few of the older, few of the women guides did end up getting married, but they were in their early 20s instead of being in their early teens. So they had the time and experience to make choices for themselves. And I'm really pleased to see that the Som Tamang, who was with Phil Meyer, Som's sister, walking with me the first time to Batassi, she got married last year, and she is now still one of his lead guides. So it hasn't stopped her from actually pursuing what she loves doing, which is being a trekking guide. So that's the trafficking side of things. And yeah, there's been no child marriages as well. So he's effectively, I'm very proud to say, has saved a generation in his village.
And does it spread to the next door village?
Yeah, there is some impact with that. And in fact, what Som wants to create is have Batassi be a hub for other villages to come, like a centre of excellence for education. So there is some distribution of school resources to other villages, and in the post-earthquake there were fundraising campaigns for schools and buildings in other villages. So it is an impact outside of Batassi as well.
Just going back a little bit, are there building contractors there that can teach some of the young boys how to build and skills to help rebuild these buildings? And
potentially. I haven't been, unfortunately I haven't been back since 2018 because of COVID. I've been wanting to get back there since then, and hopefully in October I will. But yes, there are programs, but it's just not like Australia. It's a little less formal than here in those remote villages. Yes, Glenn.
Thanks very much, Kirsty. That was fabulous. I haven't been back to Nepal since 1986, and then it was the kingdom. And I was wondering whether Som's efforts at getting any government support, I believe there's an Australian government.
Yes, so things have changed a lot. The government of Nepal actually invested, I think, about $50,000 in the school a couple of years ago, which made a big difference and allowed them to grow the offerings and the teachers at the school. So yeah, things are changing. There's a lot more representation now of some of the Indigenous culture groups in government, and indeed women. So they had their first female president a few years ago. So things are changing, but they still have a ways to go. About 16 at the moment. Yeah. But Som's sister Fulmaya was 11 by the time she actually got the opportunity to go to school. So yeah, a lot of them are behind the 8 ball when they begin, but it's very, very different now. There's an expectation that all children will go to school.
Is it just in that village that the expectation is to go to school, or is that had a ripple effect on other villages around them?
I believe it has a ripple effect. And look, Som's not the only one who's doing this kind of work. There's other organisations in other villages who are doing similar things. So there is change in terms of attitudes towards education.
How connected is the village? Like, do they have TV, internet, outside influences?
They don't really have TV. Again, I haven't been there now for a few years, so technology has improved and increased. But even when I was there the first time, I was amazed. I was sitting looking at the Himalayas and the green rice terraces, and I actually was able to FaceTime into a meeting of the Friends of Himalayan Children back in Cairns. There was internet reception in the village, but it also went out for 9 days, and my mum thought I was dead. So, yeah, it wasn't. There's still intermittent electricity and coverage, but it's a lot better. The connectivity is a lot better than it was, and that's reflected now in the school. The school was actually rebuilt with the help of Caritas Switzerland. So they have a beautiful new school, and they have computers in there thanks to Rotary Club of Cairns Sunrise, and it's sort of more like a 21st century school now. When I taught there were dirt floors and dirt walls, and tin walls, and it didn't take away at all from the kids' enthusiasm of being there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you buy the book today here at our store, any of the profits that we would normally make will be donated to your organisation.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.